right, let's get started today. Welcome everyone to this episode of Fuel for Thought. We are going to be talking about a question that we've been getting a lot from our student athletes regarding immune function and how to support their immune function during this time, especially because staying healthy is so important for staying on the field, staying on the court. We know that missed days of training can impact performance definitely down the road. So we want to talk about that today. And I wanted to talk a little bit first about immune resistance versus immune tolerance, because we do fuel those things differently and they are different. So it's important that we understand that foundation so that we know what our nutrition interventions are targeting. Then I'm going to talk about some specific nutrients and some specific foods that are going to support our immune tolerance specifically. And then we're going to talk about some COVID trends and some things that we've been seeing here in performance nutrition in terms of questions about supplements and foods and different things like that. So hopefully we're able to hit on all of the questions that you have, but if you have questions at the end, we'll definitely hang around at the end and answer anything that you have for us. So let's first talk about immune resistance and immune tolerance, because these are different. And it's important that we kind of understand why they're different, how they're different. So immune resistance is getting at the strength of the immune system, the weapons available. So this is talking about the antibodies that you have available and the B cells and the T cells and all the things that, the weapons that you need in order to fight the battles that need to be fought in terms of your immune system. And so in terms of resistance, most people have pretty decent immune resistance. They have pretty good weaponry, if you will, as long as they are getting adequate calories, as long as they're getting adequate protein, and they have a generally healthy diet. So it doesn't have to be perfect by any means, but as long as you don't have any major deficiencies, even for athletes training at high intensities, as long as there are no major deficiencies, immune resistance seems to be in a pretty good place. People seem to have the weapons that they need in order to fight the battles against illness. But over the past couple years, exercise immunologists have started to look at immune tolerance, which is basically, are we deploying these weapons appropriately and to the right strength? Do we have the appropriate systems in order to exert enough effort against this kind of pathogen that comes in, but not too much, okay? We don't want to overdo our reaction and react to things that maybe aren't a problem to begin with, or we don't want to overreact to things that are only a little bit of a problem. And so this is why, it's semantics, but exercise immunologists really do not like immune boosting. They don't like that word, boost your immune system, because that to them is saying that the immune system could overreact to something that it shouldn't be reacting that high to. And when our immune system overreacts, it actually destroys perfectly healthy tissue. And it also spends a lot of energy fighting something that doesn't need to be fought. So what we're going for in terms of our athletes and keeping them healthy is appropriate resistance and then also appropriate tolerance. So today I'm really going to be focusing on nutrients and foods that help us have appropriate tolerance to deploying our weaponry at the right time and in the right amount, as not to damage excessive tissues and as not to keep the severity of the symptoms going on longer than it needs to. So tolerance is what we're going to be getting at today. So as we talk about tolerance, there's a couple of science-based nutrients that are actually aimed at helping us with our immune tolerance. That is probiotics and prebiotics, because these nutrients can influence the health of the intestines and the health of your microbiome, which is all of the healthy bacteria that live largely in your intestine, but really all over your body as well. So we'll talk about where you get probiotics and where you get prebiotics and how we can incorporate those into our day. We're also going to talk about vitamin C, because there is some great research showing that vitamin C is an antioxidant that can mitigate against excessive tissue damage during infection. So we really want our bodies to deal with the infection and only the infection and not damage a bunch of other tissue in the process. And vitamin C helps us do that. Same thing with vitamin D. It's a little bit of a different mechanism, but vitamin D is also there to make sure that we don't get excessive damage from our immune response. So let's talk about probiotics first. Probiotics are actually living microbes that we can get through our food. And when we put them into our body, they can actually give the bacteria that's in our body healthy benefits. And so probiotics can also help by enforcing our intestinal barrier, this intestinal barrier is really important for immune health. They can also actually compete with pathogens. So if there's pathogens that want to go in and attack our gut, probiotics can say, no, thank you. I'm going to block you from coming in here, and I'm going to block you from creating this damage in your gut. And like we said, that's really important because a lot of our immune health lives in our gut. Also, probiotics can prevent unnecessary inflammatory responses, which gets back to that tolerogenic property. And then products of probiotic metabolism. So when probiotics are kind of doing their work, they give off lactic acid. And lactic acid is good in this instance in that it can inhibit pathogen growth in our gut. So a lot of great things that probiotics do. We know why we need to get them now. So where can we get them? All right. We can largely get these probiotics through fermented foods. So we should be having things like sauerkraut when available, kimchi, some of the hard cheeses would be great sources of probiotics. There's actually some cottage cheeses and definitely some yogurts that are putting in good bacteria into their products, but also their products naturally have some probiotics as well. So miso soup is another example of a fermented food. Kefir is another example, sort of like a drinkable yogurt, but that's a great option that we can use for creating smoothies. If we want to put a little bit of extra probiotic in our smoothies, we can buy this kefir and go ahead and do that. Kombucha is awesome. So many of these foods can be eaten just as they are. You know, we don't need to have a bunch of fancy recipes. We can just eat these foods as they are. But if you're looking for some fancy recipes, one thing you might try is just making your own kind of healthier version of a Reuben sandwich. So Reuben sandwich has beef on it. It's made with rye bread and also Swiss cheese. And so you can make this as kind of a panini sandwich, perhaps in your apartment kitchens, and that would be kind of an easy way to incorporate sauerkraut into your day. But a lot of people are just kind of putting sauerkraut with potatoes and maybe with some chicken sausage and making like a breakfast hash. So that could be a good idea. And then obviously the other recipe that I think is pretty simple is just making sure that we're getting these probiotic rich yogurts and probiotic rich kefirs and into our smoothies when we're making our smoothies. But like I said, you don't even have to make a recipe. You can just eat these foods as they are. I would recommend, especially as we're going into flu season and into these kind of winter months, that we are trying to get at least 1 to 2 servings, which would be like 1 to 2 cups of probiotic rich foods a day. So keep that in mind. Keep this on your list of things to look out for at the grocery store or at the dining halls. So let's talk about prebiotics, because we can't really talk about probiotics without talking about prebiotics. So prebiotics are actually, I like to think of them as the food for probiotics. So these prebiotics are basically non-digestible carbohydrates. So it's essentially fiber that the probiotics or the gut bacteria in your gut like to eat as food. And when they eat this food, the prebiotics, it keeps that bacteria very healthy. And like I said, we want to have that bacteria really healthy because it's an important part of our immune system. So we can get prebiotics through a couple of different kinds of grains. Oatmeal, barley is one of them, but I really wanted to highlight these rice packets and these whole grain packets that you can get at pretty much every grocery store. So these grain packets can be multiple different kinds of whole grains, and you just put them in the microwave, and you can use these as essentially your rice, whatever you would use rice for. So you can put them in your stir fries. You can just put them, simple on a side next to your chicken and broccoli. But these are great ways to just, pick up several of these simple rice packets and incorporate them as your carbohydrate in your meal. And then you're knowing that you're getting some healthy prebiotics. Also cooking with garlic and cooking with onions. Garlic and onions are also prebiotics as well. So when maybe you're making a spaghetti at home and you want to use that jar of sauce, maybe chop up some onions, chop up some garlic and throw that in there as well. And now you're getting some prebiotics in your spaghetti in a very simple way. Prebiotics are also in foods like apples and bananas. So you can just easily grab these from Nona Joe's when you're walking through the line and know that you're getting your prebiotics in that way. And then another food that I wanted to highlight was oatmeal. We've talked about making overnight oats in the past on a few previous episodes, so you can go back and we can talk more about that if you have questions at the end, but just making yourself some simple oatmeal or making a couple of jars of that can be really nice to have on hand. You can also make your homemade granola, which we've talked about in a previous recipe, but you can easily, we talked about that athlete smoothie. We go back to it quite a bit. Just throw a small handful of oatmeal in your smoothie and blend it up and eat it. The other piece is that some people like to use oats in meatloaf, or they like to use oats in their meatballs that they make. And so that's a cool addition as well to get your prebiotics in. And then the other thing I wanted to highlight is just your basic cocoa or dark chocolate. And so that can come as a treat if you want to get, a dark chocolate bar that is 70% or higher. Dark chocolate, you can actually get some prebiotics from there as well. So the food industry has recognized that prebiotics are really important for gut health, really important for immune health. And so a lot of different companies have actually started adding prebiotics into their foods. And so I have an example of a Kind bar down here, but you can see that a Kind bar has chicory root fiber in it. And so if you ever see that chicory root fiber, or if you ever see the galacto-oligosaccharides, or oligofructose in your bars or in your cereals or in your cookies or biscuits or those kind of packaged foods, that you're getting some prebiotics from those as well. So let's go on and talk about vitamin C. Vitamin C is, pretty classically known for getting a reputation around immune health. So why is that? Vitamin C is a water-soluble antioxidant. And what that means is that when an antioxidant gets inside of your body, it really helps decrease some of the just natural oxidative stress that occurs in your body. And we talked in a past episode about how oxidative stress can be kind of like a domino effect. And if you don't kind of put a patch on that oxidative stress, it can create tissue damage all over your body, kind of like a domino effect. So we want to make sure that we're getting antioxidants like vitamin C in every day. And so it's going to mitigate excess tissue damage during infection, just to make sure that we're not having a response to our cold or whatever it might be that's, above what we need to. And so especially during periods of heavy training or during a period of travel, or when you know that there's just going to be a little bit more stress on your body, maybe it's exams, maybe it's not getting as much sleep, although that's really critical to the process. But if you know that you're going to be under a little bit more stress and potentially at risk for getting sick, it's not a bad idea to bump up your vitamin C rich foods, okay? And I underline foods for a couple of reasons. Is because if you're just intentional about the vitamin C rich foods that you're getting, it's not really hard to meet your needs. I mean, most women need 75 milligrams of vitamin C a day, and men need 90 milligrams of vitamin C a day. And that can be achieved pretty easily through just one handful of strawberries, through one bottle of single serve orange juice, through a cup of broccoli. And so if you're getting the 5 to maybe even up to 13, depending on your goals, servings of fruits and vegetables a day, you really should be doing a pretty good job getting the vitamin C that you need through food. It's not necessary to go out and buy, mega dose supplements. And when I say mega dose, I mean a supplement that contains more than 1,000 milligrams of vitamin C. There are definitely potentially some risks associated with that. Mega dose vitamin C supplementation can lead to diarrhea, which isn't great for athletes because then it can lead to dehydration and then decreased performance and health due to the dehydration. Nausea and vomiting. I mean, you can actually think that you're sick when you are overdosing on vitamin C. So it can make things a little bit tricky if you're grabbing those mega dose vitamin C supplements. So we definitely want to watch out for those. And then finally, the last thing I'd mention, especially for athletes, is that the mega doses of vitamin C in some research have been linked to decreased ability to optimally adapt to your training. So you're trying to get the most out of your training. If you throw in too many antioxidants, it can actually blunt a really important response towards adaptation. So you don't want to just kind of overdo it in these areas by grabbing a bunch of supplements when you can very easily get all the vitamin C that you need through food. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about vitamin D. Okay, most people get their vitamin D through the sun. And honestly, if you live above Atlanta or north of Atlanta, it's going to be hard for you to get your sun that you need to make vitamin D in the winter months. So it's probably one of the more popular vitamin supplements that we talk about and discuss here in Performance Nutrition. So if you have questions about your vitamin D status, or you think that you might be a good candidate for a vitamin D supplement because you're not getting any sun, and maybe you have a few other risk factors around bone health and things, just make sure that you come and talk to us. We don't want to blind supplement with vitamin D. We want to make sure that we're really intentional about the dose. And we want to make sure that we're really intentional about the brand, because it's important for everyone to know what they're putting in their bodies, but especially our athletes that are getting drug tested. So there are some foods that also contain vitamin D, and I'll get to those in a second. But I think everyone knows that vitamin D is kind of famous for its role in bone health and calcium homeostasis, around calcium kind of getting deposited into the bone and then getting kind of broken down a little bit and then redeposited. So I think that's really well known. I think that what's less well known is calcium's anti-inflammatory effects. And so we're learning more about vitamin D's role in the immune system, and it looks like the reason that it can be very impactful is because it is a pretty good anti-inflammatory. And we really want to make sure that when we need to have an immune response, when we have to fight something off, that we're not doing it to excess and creating more inflammation than necessary, which is going to prolong our symptoms and keep us out of training and perhaps life longer than we want to be. So vitamin D is really good about controlling the inflammation so that we aren't sick longer than we need to be. So that is, the basis behind why you need to focus on vitamin D in terms of immune health. So some vitamin D rich foods, salmon and mackerel and tuna are fatty fish, are really good food sources of vitamin D. And you can obviously cook salmon as a fillet of salmon if you have the time and the energy and the space and all of that. But in order to keep it simple, maybe just pick up a can of tuna or a can of salmon and just keep that available with some plain Greek yogurt or some mayonnaise if you like, and just make kind of a salmon dip. Make it on the weekend and just kind of have it available so that you can use it to spread on bread, or you can use it with crackers, or you can dip carrots in it or something like that, just to have a source of vitamin D rich food available, especially in the winter months, especially as we're going to be able to get the sun that we hope to get. So the other thing, vitamin D is actually in egg yolks as well, not the whites, but the yolks. And so hard-boiled eggs might be a really nice thing to food prep, or I know that they also have hard-boiled eggs up in Nona Joe's that you can grab as well. And make sure that you eat the yolk. There's a lot of great nutrients in the yolk, and one of them is vitamin D. Another idea for vitamin D would be mushrooms. And so when you go to the store, you can kind of see if your mushrooms on the package, usually it'll say have been exposed to sunlight. Mushrooms are super cool in that if they're exposed to sunlight, they can actually store vitamin D inside of them. And then we can eat it and then we can get the vitamin D. So it's pretty cool. You can look out for sunshine exposed mushrooms. And then because it's really difficult for us to get our vitamin D through food alone, especially in the winter months here, a lot of food companies have started fortifying vitamin D into their foods. So you can find vitamin D fortified orange juice, vitamin D fortified milk, of course, and even vitamin D fortified cereal. So that would be a really quick, easy switch. If you're somebody who likes to eat a bowl of cereal for breakfast or maybe as one of your snacks, just kind of flipping over the label and seeing, is this a cereal that is fortified with vitamin D? And if you don't have one, if you switch over, this is a good way to start to support your immune health during these winter months. So that is vitamin D. And so I just wanted to talk a little bit about some of our COVID nutrition trends that we've been finding. So here in Performance Nutrition, most of you on the call know that we have a very extensive supplement review process. We take our dietary supplement review process very seriously because this is how we help our athletes stay healthy and safe and free of any troubles that might be caused by drug tests. And so we have been doing a lot of supplement reviews in the past couple of weeks since our athletes have returned to campus. And what we've noticed is that there are a lot more supplements that are coming in aimed at immune function and immune health and supporting those things, especially as it might relate to COVID or the flu or et cetera. So what we have noticed is that some of these supplements are, one, not safe. And so we've seen some things like colloidal silver. We've seen some things like zinc nostril sprays. And so that nostril spray can actually inhibit your sense of smell. And that is a sign or a symptom of COVID. So that can get very confusing. So we discourage people from those types of nose sprays. And then colloidal silver is also really unsafe as it can have some impacts on our eyes and many other organs in our body. So, but we've just gotten so many questions. And so the first thing is I just would like to encourage our student athletes definitely to reach out for help. Because, there are definitely some things that we can do nutrition wise to support our immune resistance and our immune tolerance. And it's really difficult to go at those things alone. The other thing that we have to watch out for, as we've talked about, is the megadoses. So, if you're taking a supplement and you look at the label and you're looking at, the percent daily value that it says on the label, if it says that this supplement is 1,000% of your daily vitamin C or 5,000% of your daily vitamin B6. Generally, almost always, we don't need to be getting 1,000 or 5,000% of our daily needs of anything at all. So I think that's just something to look out for on the label as well. And then the other thing that I just wanted to mention too is in terms of supplementation, we need to be careful about stacking a bunch of different kinds of supplements on each other too, because if we have a bunch of supplements maybe aimed at recovery, one's aimed at recovery and one's aimed at immune function and one is a daily multivitamin and those things, when we in Performance Nutrition will add up the amounts of the different vitamins and minerals from all of the things. And sometimes you might be getting a mega dose without even knowing that you're getting a mega dose. So these are kind of important red flags, things to watch out for yourself. And then obviously, please reach out to Performance Nutrition. We're more than happy to talk about how to support your immune system through foods and supplements if necessary. So I wanted to leave you all with a challenge. Basically, we've talked about a ton of different kinds of foods on this call, aimed at different aspects of supporting immune health. We've talked about some fresh fruits and vegetables. We've talked about some fermented foods. We've talked about some vitamin D fortified foods. We've really hit on quite a few things. And so my challenge to you is, take a look at this slide and pick out a couple of foods on this list and just add them to your grocery list. A couple of foods beyond what you're already doing, just add them to your grocery list so that you can support your immune system in a little bit bigger way over the next week or so. And then finally, I wanted to leave you with a message of, this is bigger than nutrition. All right. Athletes are definitely at risk for infection, especially in the autumn and the winter when they might not be getting as much vitamin D, especially during, times when they might be around sick people that are sick. If they've had recent illness, if they're traveling long distances, life stress, which a lot of people have right now, can make them at risk for infection. Low energy availability, I wanted to just expand upon this one a little bit. Low energy availability is talking about if you're not consuming enough calories to support your exercise. And so that is kind of deemed low energy availability, to the point where maybe you complete your exercise, but you have low energy available to do other very important tasks that your body has to do every day. So if you think that you might have low energy availability, that's a good time to reach out to Performance Nutrition, because we can do a nutrition analysis and we can figure out if you are in low energy availability or if you have enough energy or calories to support your exercise. Poor sleep obviously is going to increase risk. An increase in training load, like if you are in some sort of a training camp right now. If you are a higher level athlete competing nationally or internationally, for a couple of reasons, because that oftentimes increases travel and it can increase intensity for longer periods of the year. And then also, I wanted to hit on this low mucosal immunity too, because that's basically, can be impacted by hydration. Our mouth is often our first line of defense in terms of making sure that if we have enough saliva available, we have enough saliva IgA, and that's our first line of defense for kind of stopping pathogens in their tracks before they get any more into our systems. So I would just, give a shout out to hydration, which we will be talking about on an upcoming call, but that's going to be important for avoiding illness if possible. So like I said, bigger than nutrition. If you can stay away from sick people as much as possible. Obviously, during this time, we're thinking about masks. We're thinking about sanitizing and washing our hands. We're thinking about social distancing. Those things are going to be really important. If you have a way to monitor and manage all forms of your stress, that would be great. Just a reminder, we do have an excellent sports psychology staff here at Northwestern. And so if you need some coping mechanisms for managing your stress, they are just such an awesome resource. Don't forget about your sleep. Make sure we're getting enough protein, which we've hit on previous episodes, but you should be getting small doses of protein in all of your meals and snacks. And then we already kind of talked about water. So with that, I am going to stop the recording, and then if anyone on the call wants to hang out, wants to ask some questions, I can definitely hang out and answer those, or we can have a discussion around that as well. So I want to thank you all for coming. Really appreciate you attending the Lunch and Learn. As you know, we do record the content part of these sessions, and then we put some clips on our Instagram and on our YouTube. So take care, and I will definitely hang out if you need anything else.